You're now rocking with Hood Rich Ways TV.
Then at 12:26, the judge said that the jury had reached a verdict, and 4 minutes later, we learned that the jurors found El Chapo guilty on that first count. Everything but 2 violations. Again, as Ricky mentioned, there's 27 violations within that first count, but the first one being the most significant. And if he was found guilty on those violations and that count, we're talking about life in prison, which is exactly what we're talking about now. And as you reported at the top, guilty on all counts. So again, though, we're talking about a very long trial, a significant trial. The man who was known as being one of the most powerful drug lords in the world. This is a case that the prosecution has been building against El Chapo for over a decade now. This case, again, went 3 months long. They deliberated, the jurors deliberated for 34 hours over a period of 6 days. 8 women, 4 men. A lot to consider in terms of the facts, in terms of evidence. There were 56 witnesses that the prosecution brought, and 4 of them were cooperating witnesses. In other words, these were people who at one point worked with El Chapo. One man testifying that he saw El Chapo kill someone and bury them alive. But you had phone calls in which there were alleged drug deals with El Chapo speaking about where to go next, where to put these drugs. You had images of the drugs. You had a diamond-encrusted firearm. But this case really came down to money, leadership, and drug crimes. And El Chapo found guilty on all counts. I was actually just in the restroom with his wife, Emma. She seemed very... This was right before the verdict came down, but she seemed very calm and collected, as El Chapo had been throughout this as well. Every time he would come into the courtroom, from what I could see in the overflow room, he would shake all of the hands of his attorneys. He was smiling. And then I learned, excuse me, from one of his defense attorneys earlier, who was actually kind of hanging out near the media room, that El Chapo had asked for a Bible starting on the first day of this trial, that he was going over the trial notes and the transcripts trying to make sure that everything got in terms of his defense to his attorneys. That's what his attorney's saying, that he would at times almost question certain witnesses or tell his attorneys what they need to be advocating on his behalf. But this is, I'm sure, something that maybe he really didn't believe, that he would be found guilty on all of the counts, despite the overwhelming amount of facts and evidence that the prosecution brought when you look at this case in its entirety.